Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I get asked a lot. Actually, I got two emails, and I'm not going to read either one of them, but they both kind of say the same thing. And it's a question I've heard in the shop a lot. It's a question that comic people have debated a lot, and it basically goes like this: um, In a world with Superman and Wonder Woman and even Batman running around, how does it make sense to have a character like Green Arrow? How does it make sense to have a Punisher when you have, the Hulk and you have Thor? You know, how can a rational comic universe have these characters around? I'm like, isn't Green Arrow, Black Canary, aren't they, borderline useless because their power set doesn't even remotely compare to things, A- and and the answer is one, it's kind of a dumb question because I think good comic runs have answered this many times over. The Punisher is not the Hulk. And when you read the Punisher, you don't have the Punisher going up against the Abomination or the Red Skull, or I mean, arguably the Punisher versus the Red Skull might work, but like the Punisher against Ultron, you wouldn't do that because it wouldn't make any sense. It was like when they did the Anna Cinti Daredevil against Ultron. Daredevil mostly just got his ass handed to him, and he was still able to kind of eke out a win. But I mean, it was very, very clear in that comic that if the fight had been allowed to progress or do what it needed to do, Daredevil was going to get destroyed. There was just no hope for it. You can't do Punisher versus Thanos. It does not work. The only way, you know, the only way I was going to say the only way it does work, but it's not true. It still doesn't work. That doesn't mean, comic companies won't do hey, it'd be really funny. It'd be really funny is the Punisher against Thanos. And like Thanos is like, what the fuck is this? And then Punisher like kicks him in the balls. And then Thanos is like, oh, my little Thanoses. God, you got me right in the Infinity Stones. And then Punisher's like, wah, ha. And then that's the end of the comic. And you may say that's an exaggeration, but I mean that seems like kind of how we got Squirrel Girl beats up Galactus. So I think that kind of stuff is stupid shit, and it just doesn't help anything. But the reality is, if you look at the Punisher and you look at the comics he's in, if you look at Green Arrow and you look at the good runs there, you look at Nightwing and the good runs there. Nightwing's not my favorite character. I feel obligated to say that every single time I talk about Nightwing. But anyway, if you look at these things, there's no there's no reason why you can't have those comics sitting along the shelf with Thor. The trick is don't put those characters into contests that are kind of bizarrely outside their power set. Don't have Green Arrow taking on Darkseid. That would be stupid. It just you have to go through too many tricks and shenanigans in order to make that even remotely work, and it won't ever work. So don't do it. Many of you have ideas in your head right now, but but what if Green Arrow got imbued with the power cosmic over from the leak in the Marvel universe? Yeah, I mean, okay, you could jump through lots of hoops to do it, but it's not a good idea. The best Green Arrow stories have been street level, have been areas where he's kind of out of his depth, where he's clearly struggling. He's not facing the same kind of threats that Batman's facing, just like Batman largely isn't facing the kind of threats Superman's facing. There's a reason why you don't have Batman arcs where Batman is taking on, Brainiac or Zod, because the comic writers know it just requires too much suspension of disbelief to not have Zod just fly in and punch a hole through Batman's chest and keep moving. You can only go to the well of, well, Batman's always prepared for everything so many times. There's things he just is not prepared for. And, every now and then you could do a story where Batman's punching way outside of his power class and figures out a way to make it work. But you don't have that be every story. It would ruin it. Just like you don't have, you don't have the Punisher taking on the Elders of the Universe. It just wouldn't make any sense. But that doesn't mean you get rid of those characters, because if you're doing it right as a comic company, number one, you're able to tell stories in all these different genres. Some people like street level stories, and some people like cosmic stories. It's okay to have both. Sometimes if you do it really, really well, you tell a nice, cohesive, complete universe where you have, the fact that you've got people like Thor and the Silver Surfer and, the Avengers with their biggest power set. and they are taking on the massive earth crippling threats, which means they don't have time to take on the embezzlement and the burglary and the other crimes out there. Well, that's something that's better served for Daredevil or the Punisher or Elektra to a large extent, or you just you acclimate the character to the right story. In the DC universe, why why wouldn't you? Why would you would want Superman taking on an evil, dark side enabled legion of superheroes? You wouldn't want you wouldn't want to have a comic where all like, again, I'm picking on Green Arrow a lot, but you want to like Green Arrow, Nightwing, and Black Canary going up against the pits of apocalypse. Like that would, again, it might make for kind of a silly spectacle, and some people might be tempted to do it. But on a day to day kind of selling comics throughout your universe, you need to have the story fit the crime, if you will. Look at people give Snyder a lot of shit sometimes for doing these kind of bizarre, over the top, kind of crazy action stories. You have the dark multiverse of Batman and all the rest. But if you look at his run, the run with Capello, the one that really was where he gained a lot of his popularity. He goes against the Joker a couple times. He goes against the Court of Owls. We have the Year Zero where he's doing stuff with the Riddler. You didn't, despite all of the rep that Snyder gets for just doing crazy over the top shit. You don't have there's not a story arc in there where Batman is facing off against the entire Legion of Doom by himself. He didn't write that because he can't sustain a run with that. And it takes away a lot of the specialness of who Batman is. So that's how to me, it's very easy to have those characters exist in the same universe, and you want to. By the way, the other thing you need to do is don't make your overpowered heroes too overpowered. Meaning, like a comic book that shows Superman can actually clean up all crime in Metropolis in an afternoon without breaking a sweat because he's just so powerful, flies around so fast, and everything else. That's a bad idea as a story. Same thing's true with the Flash. Like there's been stories where like the Flash is able to just kind of run all around Keystone City and just he could basically, there is no crime because he's there before anything is happening. That's all he's just running around, just no problem, nothing else needed. That's that's not a fun story. It's not fun for the reader to see the character doing that. And two, you have to contemplate like, yeah, Flash is gonna at some point take on Captain Cold and Grodd and all kinds of other stuff. And over here, you're gonna get some ninjas trying to poison a river or something. Maybe that's something Nightwing can get on top of. Right? So you need to. You've got a lot of different things going on in this universe. Don't make your overpowered characters so powerful that readers start to question why anyone else is needed. Which again, unless you're a very bad writer, there's no reason why you should do that. And then two, just acclimate the comic and the crime to the characters. Simple. Really simple. Knowing that your readers sometimes like to see Thanos breaking the moon in half, and sometimes they like to see a bunch of gangsters, dealing, peddling drugs, and Punisher has to come in and kill them all. That's what you have to do. And by the way, as long as I'm on the topic to kind of close it out, to me, that's a little bit of how Marvel and the writers and editorial lost their way on the Punisher. Because the Punisher, at his best, if you look at his run and you look at all the comics that are beloved and are great, the Garth Ennis run, the stuff that Zek did back in the day, it's the Punisher dealing with, criminals. Some of them over the top James Bond level of silly criminals, sometimes just really gritty criminals. But you have Matt Rosenberg come along and like, let's give him the War Machine armor, and it's like, okay. And by the way, that wasn't by a mile the worst story there. I mean, at least that's like the Punisher's getting an upgraded set of weapons, and that's okay. But then you have to start hanging out with Shield and other characters from the Iron Man universe and everything else, or at least the readers will suspect you will. So I mean, again, you could that's probably a bad example. Rosenberg didn't do a bad job with a lot of that stuff. It's just the more you enhance it, one, the less appealing the character is. And so you have these writers today going, well, like the Punisher is sending a bad message because a couple Republican cops use the Punisher logo as part of their thing, and we don't like that they do that. So we're gonna have to make him a immortal ninja of the hand. Like, okay, what? No, just have him kill criminals. That's all you need to do. Have them kill criminals. I I mean, hell, if you like, if I'm Marvel and I'm really, really bothered with the idea that, right wing people are MAGA, like the Punisher, because the skull logo is cool looking. And so they've co opted it, as Rich Johnson would say. They've co opted the Punisher logo and something must be done. Well, you're the writer. Just be a little bit more creative. Have okay, we're going to do a, 2-issue arc, or sorry, a two arc. So 2 6-issue arcs, 12 issues. And the Punisher is going to go up against some kind of white supremacy human smuggling thing, trafficking thing. I mean, look, you can actually tell if you really want to do the super anti-Trump comic. I mean, the Punisher is one of your best ways to do it. Quite simple. The country has been whipped into a frenzy over immigration, and it's bad. And so people are taking justice into their own hands, and they're assaulting and being racist against immigrants. Punisher has to come in because that's a crime. They're basically beating up on poor defenseless immigrants. So the Punisher comes in and shoots some of them. And then he realizes that down at the border, there's some dishonest border patrol people, and they're letting the drugs in, or letting the human trafficking in, but they're also, doing, huge human right violations at the border, keeping people in terrible cells, cells that AOC will cry outside of. And so the Punisher has to go down there and, fight for the defenseless against these corrupt people who are using the power of the government, and the deep state of the government are actually, criminals. And I'm like, that, to me, like, you could write a 12-issue arc of the Punisher kind of working his way up the chain against kind of racist government officials who have let power go to their heads and are attacking poor, defenseless, black and brown people. And I mean, to me, that's going to be the most anti-Trump story you could write. I mean, or alternatively, you can go like, I don't know what we can do about this logo. I guess we're just going to have to make it so he's a psychopath and then send him off into the, the weird world universe, never to be seen from again. I know a new comic's coming out, but it's like, with a little bit of creativity, you can do this. I'm just saying, it's not that hard, but yeah, whatever. Anyway, what do you think? The characters like Green Arrow completely useless? I mean, of course not, but what's your argument? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for listening.